The crack of his palm against her face echoed through the concrete tunnel at exactly 9:47 p.m., louder than the roar of 70,000 fans streaming past them toward the parking lot. Clara's head snapped sideways, her vision exploding in white stars as she stumbled backward into the rough stadium wall, her grandmother's cross necklace swinging forward and catching the fluorescent light. 3 security cameras captured it. 47 phones recorded it. The merchandise booth manager witnessed it from 15 feet away. For exactly 4 seconds, everyone within sight froze, the couple holding nachos, the group of teenagers in team jerseys, the stadium worker pushing a cleaning cart. Time suspended itself around the violence, creating a tableau of shock and secondhand shame. Clara didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't collapse the way Justin Monroe clearly expected. Instead, she pressed one hand to her burning cheek, tasted blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her mouth, and with her other hand, reached for the cross at her throat, the one her grandmother had given her before she died. The one that had survived homelessness and hunger and every dark moment of the past 2 years. Still can't take what you deserve, can you? Justin's voice dripped with contempt, his Tom Ford cologne reaching her before his words fully registered. His fiancée, blonde, designer everything, Hermes bag worth more than Clara's monthly rent, clung to his arm like a trophy. That's for wasting 2 years of my life, you pathetic. Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket. 3 times. Rapid succession. Justin Monroe. Her ex. The man who'd stolen $42,867.29 from their joint account while her mother lay dying in an Atlanta hospital. The man who'd emptied their apartment and destroyed her credit in 72 hours. The man who'd left her homeless with exactly $8,000 to her name and a text message that said, "You were always too good for me, but not good enough to keep." That was 2 years ago, when she'd been broken and desperate and alone. What Justin didn't know, what he couldn't see because he was too busy performing for his audience, was that Clara Bennett wasn't that woman anymore. Didn't know about the platinum engagement ring she kept safe at home, too precious to risk wearing to her stadium job. Had no clue about the modest Toyota in the parking garage, paid in full. No idea about the apartment in Riverside with the upgraded security system, or the $25,000 she'd just donated to the community center's youth program. And Justin definitely didn't know about Jin Woo Park, her fiancé, the Korean businessman whose legitimate empire was built on top of connections he'd left behind in Seoul, the kind of connections that made powerful people very, very careful about who they crossed. The man whose name was flashing on her phone screen right now with a message that read, "Stay calm. I'm on my way." 2 years ago, after losing everything, Clara had been sitting outside a women's shelter at 11:47 p.m. when a black Mercedes pulled up. Jin Woo had bought her coffee at an all-night diner, listened without judgment, and 15 nights later handed her an envelope with $5,000 and an apartment key. No strings. Just a chance. That chance had become friendship. Friendship had become love. And 3 months ago, love had become a promise. Clara looked at Justin now, at his expensive suit and his cruel smile and his absolute certainty that he still had power over her, and felt something shift in her chest. Not fear. Not even anger. Just a cold, clear recognition that he was about to learn what consequences felt like. She straightened her spine, wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her hand, and met his eyes with a certainty that seemed to surprise him. "This is the last time you will ever lay a hand on me." Her voice came out steady, unwavering. The voice of a woman who'd survived absolute devastation and rebuilt herself into something stronger. Justin's smirk faltered. Just slightly. Just enough. What happens when a man who destroyed a woman's entire life discovers she's engaged to someone with the power to destroy his? When the homeless ex he abandoned finds protection with a man whose quiet influence can make million-dollar deals collapse overnight. When karma doesn't just come knocking, it arrives in a black Mercedes with security detail and a very specific sense of justice. I know you're probably wondering how Clara went from sleeping in a shelter to standing in that stadium tunnel wearing her dignity like armor. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when Jinwoo arrives and learns exactly what Justin just did. If you're new here, welcome to stories about survival, strength, and the kind of redemption that changes everything. Take 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from you all. You're amazing for being here. Now let's go back to where this all began, to the moment that destroyed Clara's world and set everything in motion. Clara's breath caught as Justin's figure loomed before her, his familiar swagger a sickening reminder of everything she had worked so hard to leave behind. The stadium exit buzzed with energy. Thousands of fans poured through the concrete tunnels, their voices blending into a chaotic symphony of celebration and disappointment. Clara had stayed late, avoiding the initial rush, her shift at the merchandise booth finally over at 9:47 p.m. She'd counted the register 3 times, $8, $2.47 in cash sales, her hands steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. She hadn't seen him in 2 years. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days, if she was being exact. And she was always exact when it came to Justin Monroe. Well. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Look what the cat dragged in. Clara's fingers tightened around her phone. The screen was still lit from the text she'd been reading, the glow reflecting off her cross necklace, the one her grandmother had given her before she passed. She forced herself to meet his eyes. He looked the same. Designer everything. The Tom Ford cologne reached her first, that woody scent that used to make her stomach flutter but now made her throat close. His Gucci loafers probably cost more than her entire month's rent. His girlfriend, fiancé, she corrected herself mentally, clung to his arm like a decorative accessory, all blonde highlights and Hermes bag. Justin. Clara's voice came out steadier than she felt. I didn't know you'd be here. Why would you? He stepped closer, forcing her back against the concrete wall. The rough surface pressed into her shoulder blades. This is a VIP section. Oh, wait, you wouldn't know anything about that anymore, would you? His fiancée giggled. The sound was sharp, performative. Clara's pulse hammered in her ears. She could smell the beer on his breath, see the cruel satisfaction dancing in his eyes. This was what he wanted. A audience. A show. I'm working, Justin. Excuse me. She moved a step around him. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to stop her. Firm enough to make a point. Working. He said it like the word tasted bad. At a merchandise booth. How far you've fallen, Clara. Remember when you had that fancy marketing job? Oh right, you lost that too, didn't you? Along with your apartment, your car, your savings. Each word landed like a physical blow. Clara felt her chest tighten, her breathing shallow. She remembered. Of course she remembered. She remembered every single dollar of the $42,867.29 he drained from their joint account while she was visiting her dying mother in Atlanta. She remembered coming home to an empty apartment, the lease broken, her credit destroyed. She remembered having $8,000 left to her name and nowhere to go. Let go of me. Or what? Justin's smile widened. He glanced at the small crowd that had started to gather, phones already out, recording. You'll call the cops? Tell them your ex-boyfriend said hello? That you can't handle seeing me happy. His fiancée pressed closer to him, her perfectly manicured hand, Valentino red polish, resting possessively on his chest. Baby, let's just go. She's not worth it. You're right. Justin released Clara's wrist, but he didn't step back. She never was. Clara's hands trembled. She pressed them against her sides, her fingernails biting into her palms. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of him. Not in front of these strangers with their cameras and their hungry eyes. I have nothing to say to you, Justin. We're done. We've been done. Done. He laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. Baby, we were never really together. You were just convenient. A placeholder until I figured out what I really wanted. The crowd had grown larger now. Clara could feel their stares like heat on her skin, could hear the whispers starting to build. Someone recognized Justin, some tech entrepreneur who'd made headlines with his startup acquisition. She was just the unnamed black girl in the stadium polo shirt, standing in his shadow. Move aside, Clara. Some of us have reservations to keep. She stepped aside. Her legs felt weak, her vision blurring at the edges. But she stepped aside because what choice did she have? What power did she have here, in this moment, with these people watching? Justin brushed past her. His shoulder connected with hers, deliberate and hard. She stumbled, her back hitting the wall again, her elbow scraping against the concrete. The sting was immediate, sharp. Then he stopped, turned, and before Clara could process what was happening, his hand connected with her cheek. The slap echoed in the sudden silence. Her head snapped to the side, her vision exploding in white stars. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth where her teeth had cut into her inner cheek. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the tunnel. Clara's hand rose slowly to her face. Her cheek burned, throbbing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She could feel the heat of it, the humiliation more painful than the physical sting. Justin leaned in close, his voice low enough that only she could hear. That's for wasting 2 years of my life. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Clara pulled it out with shaking hands. The screen was cracked, had been for months, since she couldn't afford to replace it, but she could still read the message clearly. Jean Woo, stay calm. I'm on my way, asterisk asterisk. Something shifted in her chest. Not hope, exactly. Not yet. But something solid, something real. An anchor in the chaos. She looked up at Justin. His fiancée was pulling at his arm now, uncomfortable with the attention, with the phone still recording. Security was pushing through the crowd, too late, always too late. Clara straightened her spine. Her grandmother's cross rested heavy against her collarbone, a weight she'd carried through every storm. She tasted blood and pride and something bitter that might have been the last remnants of the woman she used to be, the woman who would have crumpled, who would have apologized, who would have made herself smaller. That woman was gone. She met Justin's eyes with a clarity that seemed to surprise him. His smile faltered, just slightly, just enough for her to see the uncertainty beneath his bravado. Clara's voice came out steady, quiet, and absolutely certain. This is the last time you will ever lay a hand on me. Clara stared at the glow of her phone, Jean Woo's message a lifeline in a sea of memories that threatened to drown her. Security had escorted her to a private office near the stadium's administrative wing. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Her reflection in the dark window showed the angry red mark blooming across her left cheek, the swelling already starting beneath her eye. 3 years ago, she would have hidden that mark with makeup. Would have apologized for existing in Justin's space. Would have believed she deserved it. Clara touched her cheek gently, wincing. The skin felt hot, tender. She could still hear the crack of his palm against her face, still see the satisfaction in his eyes as she stumbled. Her phone buzzed again. Jean Woo, 15 minutes. Don't move, asterisk asterisk. She should feel relief. Instead, she felt the weight of everything she'd been carrying for 2 years pressing down on her chest. The memories came flooding back, uninvited and relentless. It was March 17, 2023, when her world collapsed. She'd been in Atlanta for 5 days, sitting beside her mother's hospital bed. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her weeks, maybe days. Clara had maxed out her credit cards to fly down, had taken unpaid leave from her marketing position at Preston and Associates, a job she'd fought so hard to get, where she'd been making $73,000 a year. Justin had seemed supportive. Had kissed her at the airport, promised to handle everything at home. Had sent her texts every day, Asterisk thinking of you. Stay strong. I've got us covered. Asterisk. Her mother died at 2:34 a.m. on a Tuesday. Clara came home on Thursday to an empty apartment. Not empty as in Justin wasn't there. Empty as in there was nothing there. No furniture. No clothes. No photos. The walls echoed when she walked through them, her footsteps hollow on the bare hardwood floors. She'd called him 17 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. Then she checked their joint account. 0. She'd checked it 3 times, her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold her phone. They'd had $42,867.29 saved. Money for a down payment on a house. Money from her mother's life insurance policy that had come through 2 years earlier. Money Clara had deposited because Justin said it would earn better interest in their high-yield savings. Gone. Every single dollar. The apartment lease, in both their names, had been broken. Clara owed $8,400 in penalties. Her personal account had $8,000 left from her last paycheck. Her credit cards were maxed. Her mother was dead. Her home was gone. And the man she'd loved for 3 years had vanished like smoke. She'd stood in that empty apartment for 2 hours, her phone clutched in her hand, unable to move or think or breathe. Then Justin had sent one final text, asterisk, you were always too good for me. But not good enough to keep, asterisk. Clara's throat tightened now, remembering. She'd collapsed on the floor that day, sobbing until her chest ached, until no more tears would come. She'd called her few friends, but they were Justin's friends first. They didn't answer. She'd called her boss, but missing a week of work without proper authorization meant her job was gone too. She'd lost everything in 5 days. The police couldn't help. Joint account meant he had legal access. The apartment was in both names, so breaking the lease was technically allowed. Her lawyer, the one she'd paid $400 she didn't have for a consultation, said she could sue, but it would cost thousands she didn't have and take years she couldn't afford to wait. Clara had been homeless for 3 weeks. She'd slept in her car, a 2008 Honda Civic that broke down on day 19. Then she'd slept in a women's shelter on Charleston Street, sharing a room with 6 other women, her belongings in a plastic bag under her cot. That's where she met Jean Woo. She'd been sitting outside the shelter at 11:47 p.m., unable to sleep because the woman in the bunk above her snored and the woman across from her cried every night. Clara had been staring at her phone, scrolling through old photos of her mother, when a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. You shouldn't be out here alone this late. His voice had been quiet, controlled. His face was partially shadowed, but she could see dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, an expensive suit that didn't belong in this neighborhood. I'm fine, Clara had said, because what else do you say to a stranger at midnight? You're not. He'd opened the passenger door. Get in. I'll buy you coffee. She should have said no. Every safety lesson she'd ever learned told her to walk away. But there was something in his voice, not pity, not threat, just certainty. Like he knew exactly what she was going through and wasn't going to leave until she accepted help. Clara had gotten in the car. They'd driven to an all-night diner on Fletcher Avenue. Jean Woo had ordered her coffee and pie, cherry, her favorite, though she hadn't told him. He'd sat across from her in the cracked vinyl booth and waited. Bad breakup, she'd finally said. Worse than that. He'd studied her face, his expression unreadable. Betrayal. Financial loss. Grief. Clara had looked up sharply. How do you? I recognized the look. Jean Woo had taken a sip of his black coffee. I've seen it before. Worn it myself once. They'd talked until 3:15 a.m. Clara didn't tell him everything, but she told him enough. He listened without judgment, without offering empty platitudes or unsolicited advice. When the diner closed, he'd driven her back to the shelter. Tomorrow night, he'd said. Same time. Same place. He'd come back every night for 2 weeks. On the 15th night, he'd handed her an envelope. Inside was $5,000 in cash and a key. Small apartment in Riverside, he'd said. First 3 months paid. No strings. No expectations. Just a chance to get back on your feet. Clara had stared at the money, her hands trembling. I can't accept this. I don't even know you. My name is Jean-Woo Park. He'd smiled slightly. Now you know me. Take it. She'd taken it. What choice did she have? The apartment had been small but clean. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, furniture that was worn but functional. Jean-Woo had helped her find a job at a community center, then at the stadium when the pay was better. He'd checked in weekly, then daily, then constantly. Somewhere along the way, checking in became coffee dates. Coffee dates became dinners. Dinners became late-night conversations where Clara finally felt like she could breathe again. 6 months ago, Jean-Woo had proposed. Clara hadn't expected it. They'd been sitting in his penthouse, the first time she'd seen where he actually lived, overlooking the city. The engagement ring was a simple platinum band with a single diamond. Elegant. Understated. Perfect. I know your past, he'd said. I know you're still healing. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to build something new with me. She'd said yes. But she'd never told Jean-Woo about Justin. Not his name, not the details, not the depth of the betrayal. She'd mentioned an ex, mentioned the money, but she'd kept Justin as an abstract concept. A ghost she'd buried. Now that ghost had slapped her in front of hundreds of people. Clara's phone buzzed. Jean-Woo, I'm here. The door to the office opened. Jean-Woo stood in the doorway, his presence steady and calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil roiling through her chest. His eyes found hers immediately, then moved to the mark on her cheek. Something dark flickered across his face, there and gone in a heartbeat. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that somehow felt louder than any slam. Tell me his name, Jean-Woo said softly. The next few days felt like walking on the edge of a cliff, with Justin lurking in the background, watching, threatening, and testing Clara's limits. Clara had told Jean-Woo everything that night in the stadium office. Every detail she'd kept buried for 2 years had spilled out between them: Justin's name, the theft, the homelessness, the 3 weeks she'd lived in her car before it died. Jean-Woo had listened without interruption, his jaw tightening with each revelation, his hands clenched on his knees. When she finished, he'd simply said, "He won't touch you again." Clara had believed him. But belief didn't stop the messages that started arriving at 6:23 a.m. the next morning. Unknown number. Saw you got yourself a sugar daddy. How much does he pay you per hour? Asterisk asterisk. She'd blocked the number. Another one appeared 10 minutes later. Unknown number. You think you're better than me now? You're still the same broke girl who couldn't afford her own apartment. Asterisk asterisk. Block. Delete. Another message. Unknown number. I'm watching you, Clara. You can't hide behind money forever. Asterisk asterisk. By noon, she'd blocked 7 different numbers. By 3 p.m., Justin had shown up at the community center, where she volunteered every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. Clara had been in the art room, helping Ms. Patterson set up supplies for the after-school program. 8-year-old Marcus was showing her his drawing of a superhero when she looked up and saw Justin through the window, standing across the street beside a silver Porsche, new, probably cost $90,000 at least. He wasn't hiding. He wanted her to see him. Her hands had trembled slightly as she set down Marcus's drawing. Ms. Patterson noticed immediately. You okay, honey? Fine. Clara forced a smile. Just need some water. She'd pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over Jean-Woo's contact. But what would she say? Justin's standing outside? He's watching me? It felt absurd, dramatic. Justin hadn't done anything. He was just standing there. Except he wasn't just standing there. He was making a point. Clara had finished her shift without looking at the window again. When she left at 5:47 p.m., the Porsche was gone. But there was a note tucked under her windshield wiper. Asterisk, remember when you used to ride in cars like mine? Now you take the bus. Pathetic, asterisk. She'd crumpled the note, her chest tight with anger. Not fear. Anger. Because Justin was wrong. She didn't take the bus anymore. Jinwoo had given her a car, a modest Toyota, nothing flashy, but it was hers, and it was paid for. But Justin didn't know that. Justin still thought she was the broken woman from 2 years ago. That night, Clara had come home to her apartment, the small one-bedroom in Riverside that Jinwoo had helped her get, and found another note slipped under her door. You can change your address, but you can't change what you are. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Jinwoo had upgraded her security system 2 months ago. She checked the camera footage on her phone. Nothing. Whoever had delivered the note knew exactly where the blind spots were. She'd called Jinwoo immediately. He'd arrived within 20 minutes, his Mercedes pulling into her parking spot with barely a sound. When he walked through her door, his expression was calm, but Clara had learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the slight hardness around his eyes. Show me. She'd handed him both notes. He'd read them carefully, his face betraying nothing. Then he'd pulled out his phone and made a call. Run a trace on Justin Monroe. Every account, every property, every business transaction from the last 5 years. I want to know where his money comes from and where it's going. A pause. By tomorrow morning. He'd hung up and looked at Clara. Pack a bag. You're staying at my place tonight. Jinwoo, I can't just. He knows where you live. He's escalating. His voice was quiet but firm. Until I know what we're dealing with, you stay where I can protect you. Clara had wanted to argue. Wanted to say she could handle this herself, that she wasn't helpless. But the truth was, she felt the fear creeping in at the edges of her anger. Justin was unpredictable. He'd proven that 2 years ago when he destroyed her life without warning. She'd packed a bag. Jinwoo's penthouse was on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights spreading out like stars below them. Clara had been here dozens of times, but tonight it felt different. Tonight it felt like hiding. I hate this, she'd said, standing at the window. Her reflection stared back at her, tired and angry. I hate that he still has this power over me. Jinwoo had come to stand beside her. He doesn't have power over you. He's desperate and flailing. There's a difference. It doesn't feel different. It will. He touched her shoulder gently, turning her to face him. Trust me. The next morning, Clara had woken to find Jinwoo in his study, reviewing documents on his laptop. She'd made coffee, his espresso machine cost more than her first car, and brought him a cup. What did you find? Justin's startup. Jinwoo had turned the laptop so she could see. The acquisition he's been bragging about? It's falling apart. The company that bought him out is being investigated for fraud. When they go down, Justin's payout goes with them. Clara had stared at the screen. Financial reports, email chains, legal documents. How did you get all this? I have resources. Jinwoo's expression was unreadable. Justin Monroe is about to lose everything he stole from you. And he doesn't know it yet. Something cold had settled in Clara's chest. Not satisfaction exactly. More like justice finally taking shape. What are you going to do? Nothing. Jinwoo had closed the laptop. I'm going to let his own choices destroy him. But I'm going to make sure you're protected while it happens. That afternoon, Clara had returned to work at the stadium. There was a game at 7 p.m., which meant the merchandise booth would be swamped. She'd arrived at 4:30 p.m. to prep inventory, her mind still turning over everything Jinwoo had shown her. At 5:15 p.m., her supervisor had called her into the office. Clara, I need to talk to you about a complaint we received. Her stomach had dropped. A complaint? Someone called this morning claiming you've been stealing from the register. Her supervisor, Dave, looked uncomfortable. I know it's not true. Your counts are always perfect. But I have to follow protocol. There's going to be an investigation. Clara's hands had clenched at her sides. Who made the complaint? Anonymous tip. But Dave had hesitated. The callers specifically mentioned yesterday's count. The $8,247. Said you pocketed $200. Justin. It had to be Justin. Clara had felt the anger rise hot in her throat, choking her. I didn't steal anything. You can check the cameras. You can check everything. I know. Dave had looked genuinely apologetic. And we will. But until the investigation is complete, I have to suspend you. With pay, he'd added quickly. It's just procedure. She'd left the stadium at 5:47 p.m., her badge temporarily deactivated, her chest so tight she could barely breathe. Justin wasn't just watching her. He was actively trying to destroy her life again. Clara had sat in her car in the parking lot, her hands gripping the steering wheel. She'd pulled out her phone to call Jinwoo, but stopped when she saw the new message. Unknown number. Lost your job yet? I'm just getting started. Asterisk asterisk. Her vision had blurred with tears of rage. She'd wanted to scream, to throw her phone, to drive to wherever Justin was and confront him. But instead, she'd taken a deep breath and typed a response. Clara, do your worst. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Asterisk asterisk. She'd sent it before she could second-guess herself. The response came immediately. Unknown number. We'll see about that. Clara had started her car and driven to her lawyer's office. The same lawyer who'd told her 2 years ago that she had no case, that Justin had technically done nothing illegal. She'd walked in without an appointment and waited 45 minutes until Margaret Chin could see her. Clara. Margaret had looked surprised. What brings you here? I want to sue Justin Monroe. Clara's voice had been steady. For everything. The stolen money, the emotional distress, the harassment. All of it. Margaret had studied her for a long moment. 2 years ago, you couldn't afford my retainer. I can now. This won't be easy. And it won't be cheap. Clara had met her eyes. I don't care. I'm done letting him get away with it. She'd written a check for $5,000, the retainer Margaret required. Money Jinwoo had helped her save over the past year, money she'd planned to use for her own business someday. But this was more important. This was about taking her power back. When Clara had left the lawyer's office at 7:32 p.m., she'd felt lighter somehow. Stronger. She'd walked to her car in the parking garage, her heels clicking on the concrete, and stopped short. Justin stood 20 feet away, leaning against his Porsche. Watching her. Their eyes met across the empty space. Clara saw the moment realization dawned in his expression, the slight widening of his eyes, the way his smirk faltered. She wasn't running, wasn't hiding, wasn't afraid. She simply looked at him, her chin raised, her grandmother's cross catching the fluorescent light. Then she got in her car and drove away, leaving him standing there in the shadow of his own uncertainty. Clara stepped into her apartment, the weight of the past few days pressing down on her, but there was something new in the air, something shifting. The investigation at the stadium had cleared her in 48 hours. Dave had called at 9:17 a.m. to apologize profusely and offer her shifts for the weekend game. The security footage showed every transaction, every dollar counted, every penny accounted for. Justin's anonymous tip had been exactly what it was, desperation disguised as strategy. But Clara hadn't gone back to work yet. She'd spent the morning at Jinwoo's penthouse, reviewing documents Margaret Chin had sent over. The lawsuit against Justin was officially filed. Civil court, seeking the full $42,867.29 plus damages for emotional distress and harassment. Margaret estimated they had a 70% chance of winning. He'll fight it, Margaret had warned during their call. Men like Justin always do. Let him fight, Clara had said. Now, standing in her apartment at 2:34 p.m., Clara felt different. Lighter somehow. She'd stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes for threatening messages. She'd stopped looking over her shoulder in parking lots. Justin could watch all he wanted. She wasn't performing for him anymore. Her phone buzzed. Jinwoo, dinner tonight? 7 o'clock, Matsuhisa, asterisk asterisk. Clara smiled. Matsuhisa was Jin Woo's favorite restaurant, upscale Japanese, reservation list 3 months long. He had a standing table. Clara, I'll be there. She spent the afternoon preparing. A shower that lasted 20 minutes, the hot water washing away the last remnants of fear she'd been carrying. She chose a simple black dress, the one Jin Woo had bought her for his business dinner 2 months ago. Elegant, understated, expensive in a way that didn't scream but whispered. At 6:43 p.m., Clara's doorbell rang. She checked the camera feed on her phone. A delivery driver stood outside holding a large box with a silver ribbon. Clara opened the door cautiously. I didn't order anything. Delivery for Clara Bennett. The driver checked his tablet. From Valentino. Her breath caught. She signed for the package and brought it inside, her hands trembling slightly as she untied the ribbon. Inside was a coat, cashmere, dove gray, softer than anything she'd ever touched. The price tag was still attached, $3,400. There was a note in Jin Woo's handwriting. Asterisk for tonight. You deserve to feel as powerful as you are. JW asterisk. Clara had pressed the coat to her face, inhaling the scent of new fabric and luxury. 2 years ago, she would have cried receiving something like this. Would have felt guilty, indebted, small. Now she felt something else entirely. She felt worthy. At 7 p.m. exactly, Clara walked into Matsuhisa wearing the gray cashmere coat over her black dress. The hostess recognized her immediately, or more likely, recognized that she was with Jin Woo and led her to the private dining room in the back. Jin Woo stood when she entered. He wore a dark suit, charcoal gray, tailored perfectly to his frame. His eyes moved over her slowly, appreciatively. Beautiful. Clara touched the coat. Thank you for this. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He pulled out her chair. You've been fighting your own battles. I wanted you to know you don't have to do it alone. They ordered omakase for both, letting the chef choose. The first course arrived within minutes. Tuna sashimi so fresh it melted on Clara's tongue, followed by yellowtail with jalapeno, then black cod that fell apart at the touch of her chopsticks. I have news, Jin Woo said between courses. His voice was casual, but Clara had learned to hear the steel underneath. About Justin's startup acquisition. Clara set down her chopsticks. What kind of news? The FBI raided the parent company this morning. Securities fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. The whole operation is under investigation. Jin Woo took a sip of sake. Justin's payout is frozen. His assets are being scrutinized. And his fiancé's father, who happens to sit on the board of directors, is under federal indictment. Clara stared at him. How do you know all this? I have friends in various places. Jin Woo's expression remained neutral. Friends who appreciate when someone brings credible information to their attention. You reported them. I simply shared what I discovered during my research. What they chose to do with that information was their decision. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite relief. Something harder, sharper. Justin's going to lose everything. He already lost the most important thing. Jin Woo reached across the table, covering her hand with his. He lost you. The rest is just consequences catching up. They finished dinner at 9:23 p.m. Jin Woo's driver was waiting outside in the black Mercedes. But before they could reach the car, Clara heard a voice that made her spine stiffen. Fancy seeing you here. Justin stood near the restaurant entrance, his fiancée nowhere in sight. He looked different, rumpled suit, loosened tie, dark circles under his eyes that even the dim lighting couldn't hide. The Porsche was parked crookedly across 2 spaces, as if he'd been in a hurry. Or drinking. Clara felt Jin Woo's hand move to the small of her back, steady and protective. But she stepped forward before he could speak. Justin. Her voice was calm. You're blocking the walkway. Am I? Justin's smile was wrong, too wide and too sharp. I heard you filed a lawsuit against me. That's cute. Really cute. It's not meant to be cute. It's meant to be justice. Justice. Justin laughed, the sound harsh. You want justice? I gave you everything. A place to live, food to eat, a life you could never have afforded on your own. And this is how you repay me? Clara felt the old familiar anger rising, but it was different now. Colder. More controlled. You stole $42,867.29 from me. You left me homeless. You destroyed my credit and my career. That's not giving. That's taking. I took what was mine. Justin's voice rose slightly. Other diners were starting to notice, to stare. That money was in our joint account. Legally mine. Morally yours? Clara stepped closer. She could smell the whiskey on his breath, see the red veining his eyes. You waited until my mother died. You waited until I was at my weakest. That's not love, Justin. That's cruelty. You think you're so strong now. Justin's gaze flickered to Jin-woo, then back to Clara. You think having a rich boyfriend changes what you are? You're still the same desperate girl who couldn't make rent. Still the same. Careful. Jin-woo's voice cut through Justin's tirade like a blade. He hadn't moved, hadn't raised his voice, but something in his tone made Justin take a step back. Choose your next words very carefully. Justin's jaw clenched. Who the hell are you? I'm the man who loves her. Jin-woo moved to stand beside Clara, his presence solid and unmovable. I'm also the man who's been very patient with your harassment. But my patience has limits. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Jin-woo's expression remained calm. You've been sending threatening messages. You've been stalking her at work. You filed a false theft report. You've left notes at her apartment. Should I continue? Justin's face paled slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. 7 different phone numbers. All trace back to burner phones purchased at the same electronics store where you bought your laptop last year. The handwriting on the notes matches samples from your social media posts. And the anonymous tip to her employer? Called from a phone registered to your business address. Clara watched Justin's confidence crumble in real time. His eyes darted between them, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. You can't prove any of that. I can. Jin-woo pulled out his phone, showing the screen to Justin. I already have. And I've shared everything with Clara's attorney. Along with documentation of the money you stole, the accounts you drained, and the debts you left in her name. Justin stared at the phone, his face draining of color. You have no right. I have every right to protect my fiancé. Jin-woo's voice remained quiet, deadly. Just like you had no right to destroy her life. But you did it anyway. Now you face the consequences. The word fiancé hung in the air between them. Justin's eyes widened, his gaze snapping to Clara's left hand. She wasn't wearing the engagement ring, she kept it safe at home, too precious to risk, but the intention was clear. You're engaged. Justin said it like he couldn't quite believe it. To him. Yes. Clara met his eyes steadily. I am. How long? 6 months. Justin's laugh was bitter. So you moved on pretty fast. Guess you weren't that broken after all. I was destroyed. Clara's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. You made sure of that. But I rebuilt. Without you, without your money, without anything you ever gave me. I rebuilt myself from nothing. And now I'm stronger than I ever was with you. Justin's hands clenched at his sides. You don't know what you're up against. I have lawyers. I have connections. You have a company under federal investigation. Jin-woo's interruption was surgical. You have a fiancé whose father is facing indictment. You have frozen assets and a lawsuit you can't afford to fight. What exactly do you have, Justin? The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sound of traffic and the murmur of other diners leaving the restaurant. Justin's expression shifted from anger to something darker. Desperation mixed with rage, a dangerous combination. You think you've won. He looked at Clara, his voice dropping low. You have no idea what I'm capable of. No idea what you've started. Jinwoo moved then, stepping between Clara and Justin with a fluid grace that spoke of training, of danger barely contained. If you threaten her again, Jinwoo said softly, you won't have to wonder what I'm capable of. You'll find out. And I promise you won't enjoy the lesson. Justin held Jinwoo's gaze for 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked away, his steps unsteady, his shoulders hunched. Clara watched him go, her heart pounding, but her hands steady. She'd faced him. She'd stood her ground. And he'd been the one to retreat. Jinwoo turned to her. Are you all right? I'm fine. And she was. She was better than fine. They got into the Mercedes. The driver pulled away from Matsuhisa at exactly 9:47 p.m. Clara's phone buzzed as they merged into traffic. Unknown number. You don't know what you're up against. The same words Justin had just spoken. But Clara felt no fear, only a grim determination. She showed the message to Jinwoo. He read it, his expression darkening. Then he made a call. It's time, he said to whoever answered. I want eyes on Justin Monroe 24/7. And I want to know every move he makes before he makes it. He hung up and looked at Clara. He's losing control. That makes him dangerous. What are you going to do? Jinwoo's smile was cold, calculated. I'm going to make sure he can't hurt you. Ever again. If you're feeling that tension building in your chest right now, you're not alone. This is exactly where Clara's life splits, between the woman Justin tried to destroy and the woman Jinwoo sees her becoming. This is the kind of story that stays with you because we've all felt powerless at some point, and watching someone take their power back? That hits different. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and turn on those notifications. You do not want to miss what happens when Justin finally realizes who he's been messing with. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Clara should have told Jinwoo about Justin from the beginning, or was she right to handle it on her own terms first? Now, let's see what happens when desperation meets consequences. The confrontation was inevitable, and when it came, it hit like a thunderclap, loud, fast, and full of rage. Clara had been at the Riverside Community Center for 3 hours, finalizing plans for the youth program she'd been developing. The walls of the small conference room were covered in sketches and budget proposals, her vision for an after-school arts initiative that would serve kids from low-income families. Kids like she'd been once, before college, before Justin, before everything fell apart and rebuilt itself. It was 4:47 p.m. when Margaretchen called. Clara, we have a problem. Margaret's voice was tight. Justin's lawyers just filed a countersuit. They're claiming you defamed him, that the theft allegations are false, and they're seeking $200,000 in damages. Clara's hand tightened on her phone. Through the conference room window, she could see children playing basketball in the gym, their laughter echoing off the walls. He can't be serious. He's desperate. The FBI investigation is closing in, his assets are frozen, and his fiancée broke off their engagement this morning. He's lashing out. Something cold settled in Clara's stomach. Not fear. Recognition. This was Justin's pattern. When cornered, he attacked. What do? We fight it. But Clara, he's going to make this ugly. Public. He's already talking to reporters about his gold-digger ex-girlfriend and her wealthy benefactor. He's spinning a narrative. Clara closed her eyes. Breathed. Let him spin. The truth is the truth. She ended the call at 4:52 p.m. and sat in the silence of the conference room, her mind racing. Justin wasn't just fighting the lawsuit. He was trying to destroy her reputation, to make her look like the villain in his story. Her phone buzzed. Jinwoo, where are you? Clara, Community Center. Riverside, ***. Jinwoo, stay there. I'm coming to you, ***. But before Jinwoo could arrive, the conference room door slammed open. Justin stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. Behind him, Ms. Patterson was trying to push past, her face alarmed. I'm sorry, Clara. He just barged in. It's okay, Ms. Patterson. Clara stood slowly, her heart hammering but her voice steady. I'll handle this. Miss Patterson hesitated, then stepped back, leaving the door open. Clara could see other staff members gathering in the hallway, phones already out, recording. Good. Let them record. Justin stepped inside, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed like a gunshot. You think you can destroy me? His voice was raw, ragged. You think you can take everything from me and walk away clean? Clara moved around the conference table, putting it between them. I'm not taking anything from you, Justin. I'm taking back what you stole from me. I gave you everything. He slammed his fist on the table. The budget proposals scattered, fluttering to the floor. A home, a life, a future. And you threw it away. You emptied my bank account while my mother was dying. Clara's voice cut through his rage like ice. You left me homeless. You destroyed my credit. You gave me nothing but trauma and debt. That money was mine. You would have wasted it on your dead mother's medical bills anyway. The words hung in the air, poisonous and ugly. Clara felt something break inside her, not in a bad way, but like a dam finally giving way. All the anger, all the pain, all the years of carrying his cruelty, it poured out in a wave of clarity. Get out. Justin laughed, harsh and mocking. Or what? You'll call your rich boyfriend? You'll hide behind him like you always hide. No. Clara walked toward him, closing the distance. She could smell the alcohol on his breath again, see the desperation in his bloodshot eyes. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm standing right here, telling you to leave. You don't get to tell me anything. Justin's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was tight, painful. You don't get to ruin my life and then act like you're the victim. Let go of her. Jean Woo's voice came from the doorway. He stood there in a tailored navy suit, his expression calm, but his eyes deadly. Behind him were two men Clara didn't recognize, both wearing dark suits, both radiating the kind of quiet danger that made the air feel heavy. Justin's grip loosened slightly, but he didn't release her. This is between me and Clara. Nothing is between you and Clara anymore. Jean Woo stepped into the room. You lost that right when you stole from her. I didn't steal anything. $42,867.29 from your joint account on March 18, 2023 at 11:23 p.m. Jean Woo's voice was precise, clinical. Wire transfer to your personal account at Mason Bank. Then 8 smaller transfers over the next 3 days to various offshore accounts. You thought you covered your tracks. You didn't. Justin's face went pale. How do you? I know everything. Jean Woo moved closer, each step deliberate. I know about the fake business expenses you claimed on your taxes. I know about the shell companies you used to hide assets. I know about the investors you lied to, the partners you cheated, the employees you stiffed on wages. That's confidential information. You can't. I can when it's relevant to protecting someone I love from a criminal. Jean Woo stopped 5 feet from Justin. Let go of her wrist. Now. Justin's hand trembled, but he held on. You think you scare me? You think your money and your lawyers and your... One of Jean Woo's men moved. Not aggressively, just positioned himself between Justin and the door. The message was clear, there was no escape route. Justin's grip finally released. Clara pulled her wrist back, rubbing the red marks his fingers had left. She could feel everyone watching, Miss Patterson in the hallway, the staff members with their phones, Jean Woo's men, Jean Woo himself. This was her moment. Not Jean Woo's. Hers. You want to know why I'm suing you? Clara's voice was steady, clear. It's not about the money. It's about accountability. You took advantage of me when I was grieving, when I was vulnerable, when I had no one. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. And you never apologized. You never even admitted what you did was wrong. Because it wasn't wrong. Justin's voice cracked. I deserve that money. I put up with you for 3 years. Your depression, your anxiety, your constant neediness. I earned. You earned nothing. Clara took a step closer. You took. That's all you've ever done. Take and take and take until there's nothing left. Well, there's nothing left for you to take from me, Justin. I rebuilt without you. I'm stronger without you. And now you're going to face consequences for what you did. Justin's eyes darted around the room, searching for allies, for sympathy, for anything. He found nothing but cold stares and recording phones. This isn't over, he said, but his voice wavered. Yes, it is. Clara met his eyes with unwavering certainty. Your company is under investigation. Your assets are frozen. Your fiancé left you. Your reputation is destroyed. And you did it all to yourself. I didn't destroy you, Justin. You destroyed yourself. You don't understand what you've done. Justin's voice dropped to a whisper. The people I'm involved with, the money I owe, you've put a target on both our backs. Clara felt Jin-woo tense beside her. What people? Jin-woo's voice was sharp. Justin's laugh was bitter. You think the FBI is investigating me because of securities fraud? That's the tip of the iceberg. The money I took from Clara? That was supposed to pay off a debt. A debt to people who don't take no for an answer. You're lying, Clara said, but her voice shook slightly. Am I? Justin pulled out his phone, showing them a text message. The number was blocked, but the words were clear. Asterisk, you have 72 hours to pay the $50,000 you owe. No extensions. Asterisk. The timestamp was from this morning. I used Clara's money to invest in what I thought was a sure thing. Justin's hands trembled as he put his phone away. It wasn't. The people I borrowed from want their cut. And when they find out I don't have it, he looked at Clara. They'll come for you too. They'll think you have it. Jin-woo moved then, positioning himself directly in front of Clara. Names. I want names. I'm not suicidal. Justin backed toward the door. Figure it out yourself. You seem to know everything else. He reached for the door handle. Justin. Clara's voice stopped him. He turned, and she saw real fear in his eyes for the first time. This is where your power ends. Whatever happens next, you brought it on yourself. Justin held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he yanked open the door and literally ran down the hallway, pushing past Ms. Patterson and the gathered crowd. The room fell silent. Jin-woo turned to his men. Find out who he owes money to. I want names, addresses, and financial records within 2 hours. Both men nodded and left. Jin-woo turned to Clara, his hands cupping her face gently. Are you okay? No. Clara's voice cracked. If what he said is true. If it's true, I'll handle it. Jin-woo's thumb brushed across her cheek. No one is going to hurt you. I promise. But Clara saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Worry. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. Justin Monroe owes us $50,000. You're his ex-wife. That makes you responsible. We'll be in touch. Asterisk, asterisk. Clara showed Jin-woo the message. His jaw clenched, his eyes going cold. They work fast. Who are they? Jin-woo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made Clara's blood run cold. People I used to work with. Before I left that life behind. Clara stared at him. What life? But before Jin-woo could answer, his phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his expression darkened. I have to take this. He stepped away, speaking in rapid Korean. Clara stood in the conference room, surrounded by scattered budget proposals and the lingering smell of Justin's cologne, and realized that everything she thought she knew about Jin-woo was about to change. He returned after 90 seconds. His face was unreadable. We need to leave. Now. Jin-woo, what's happening? He took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. I'll explain everything. But not here. Not now. They walked through the community center, past staring staff members, past Ms. Patterson's worried face. Jin-woo's Mercedes was parked outside, engine already running, driver waiting. They got in. As the car pulled away, Clara looked back at the community center, at her plans, her programs, her future, and wondered if she'd ever be able to return. Jin-woo's phone buzzed. He read the message, then looked at Clara. The people Justin owes money to, he said quietly. They want to meet. Tonight. and they want you there. The aftermath of the confrontation left a trail of broken things, and Justin wasn't the only one picking up the pieces. The meeting took place at 10:34 p.m. in a private room at the Pearl, an upscale restaurant downtown that Clara had never heard of. The kind of place that didn't advertise, didn't take reservations from just anyone, and definitely didn't appear on Google Maps. Jinwoo had explained everything during the drive. He'd been part of an organization in Seoul before coming to America 8 years ago. Not mafia exactly, but close enough. Import-export business that skirted legal lines, financial operations that existed in gray areas, protection services that sometimes required force. He'd left that world behind when his brother died, killed in a territorial dispute Jinwoo had tried to prevent. "I came here to start over," he'd said, his voice tight. "Built legitimate businesses. Made clean money. But some connections don't disappear just because you want them to." The people Justin owed money to were affiliated with Jinwoo's old organization. They'd recognized Jinwoo's name when they'd started investigating Justin's connections. And now they wanted to talk. Clara sat beside Jinwoo at a round table, her hands folded in her lap. Across from them sat two men, one in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive watch, the other younger, harder, with scars on his knuckles. The older man spoke first. His name was Mr. Huang. "Jinwoo. It's been a long time. Not long enough." Jinwoo's voice was respectful but cold. "And this must be Clara." Mr. Huang's eyes moved to her, assessing. "The woman Justin Monroe stole from. The woman he claims owes us his debt." "I owe you nothing," Clara said. Her voice didn't shake. "Justin stole from me. Whatever debt he has is his alone." Mr. Huang smiled slightly. "You have courage. I respect that. But business is business. Justin borrowed $50,000 from us 6 months ago. He promised a return of $75,000 within 90 days. He failed to deliver. Now he's claiming the money he took from you is meant to pay us back. He's lying." Clara leaned forward. "He took my money 2 years ago. Long before he borrowed from you." "We know." The younger man spoke for the first time, his voice rough. "We've done our research. Justin Monroe is a fraud, a thief, and an idiot. But he gave us your name as collateral when he took the loan. That makes you responsible in our eyes." Jinwoo's hand moved to rest on Clara's knee under the table. A warning. A comfort. "She had no knowledge of the loan," Jinwoo said quietly. "She wasn't married to Justin. She wasn't his partner. She was his victim. You know this." "What we know," Mr. Huang said, "is that Justin Monroe has no assets, no way to pay, and no value to us anymore. Which leaves us with a problem." The silence stretched. Clara felt her heartbeat in her throat. This was it. This was where they demanded she pay Justin's debt, where they threatened her, where everything she'd rebuilt came crashing down again. "I have a proposal," Jinwoo said. Mr. Huang raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "I'll pay Justin's debt. $75,000. In full. Tonight." Jinwoo's voice was steady. "In exchange, you leave Clara alone. Permanently. And you give me Justin Monroe." The younger man leaned back, studying Jinwoo. "Give you Justin? What are you going to do with him?" "Make sure he faces legal consequences for his crimes. He's been under FBI investigation. I'm going to ensure they have everything they need to prosecute. He'll spend the next 5 to 10 years in federal prison." Mr. Huang considered this. "That's not a bad deal for us. We get our money, we avoid legal trouble, and Justin gets what he deserves." He paused. "But why would you pay his debt? She's not your wife yet." "She will be." Jinwoo's hand tightened on Clara's knee. "And I protect what's mine." Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not discomfort at being called his, but recognition of what Jinwoo was doing. He was using the language these men understood: possession, territory, loyalty. He was playing their game to protect her. Mr. Huang looked at Clara. "What do you think of this arrangement?" Everyone at the table turned to her. This was her choice. Her decision. Clara thought about Justin, broke, desperate, cornered. She thought about the life he'd destroyed, the money he'd stolen, the cruelty he'd inflicted without remorse. She thought about 2 years of rebuilding, of sleeping in shelters, of working 3 jobs just to survive. I think, she said slowly, that Justin Monroe should face the full consequences of his actions. Legal consequences. I don't want him dead or hurt. I want him accountable. Mr. Huang smiled. A woman of principle. Rare. He stood, extending his hand to Jean Wu. We have a deal. Transfer the money tonight, and Justin Monroe is yours to do with as you see fit. They shook hands. The meeting ended at 11:03 p.m. In the Mercedes, Clara finally let herself breathe. You just paid $75,000 for Justin's debt. I paid $75,000 for your safety. Jean Wu looked at her. There's a difference. I'll pay you back. Every cent. I don't care how long it takes. Clara. Jean Wu took her hand. You're going to be my wife. What's mine is yours, including the ability to end this nightmare. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being free of Justin's shadow. The next 3 weeks moved like an avalanche, fast, unstoppable, devastating for everyone in its path. The FBI arrested Justin on March 15th at 6:47 a.m. at his apartment. Wire fraud, tax evasion, securities fraud, and money laundering. The evidence Jean Wu had provided, combined with what the FBI had already gathered, was overwhelming. Justin's bail was set at $500,000. He couldn't make it. He sat in county jail while his public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal. Margaret Chin called Clara on March 18th with news. Justin's lawyers want to settle. They're offering full restitution, $42, $867.29 plus interest and legal fees. Total comes to $51,340. Clara had been in her apartment, organizing donation supplies for the community center. She'd stopped, her hands frozen on a box of art supplies. He's settling? He has no choice. His criminal trial starts in 6 weeks. If he fights your civil suit too, he'll have no resources for his defense. He's trying to minimize damage. I want it in writing. Full admission of theft. Public apology. Clara. I want it, Margaret. Or no deal. There was a pause. Then Margaret said, I'll make it happen. 3 days later, Justin's lawyer sent a signed settlement agreement. Justin admitted to unlawfully taking $42,867.29 from their joint account without Clara's knowledge or permission. He apologized for the emotional and financial hardship he'd caused. He agreed to pay full restitution plus damages. The check arrived on March 22nd. Clara stared at it for 10 minutes. $51, $340, made out to Clara Bennett, signed by Justin's lawyer, because Justin was in jail. She deposited it at 2:17 p.m. Then she went to the community center and wrote a check of her own, $25,000 to fund the youth arts program for the next 2 years. Miss Patterson had cried when Clara handed it to her. Are you sure? This is so much money. I'm sure. Clara smiled. Someone helped me when I had nothing. Now I'm helping others. The news about Justin's arrest spread through their old social circles like wildfire. The friends who'd ghosted Clara 2 years ago suddenly started reaching out. Melissa, oh my God, Clara. I had no idea Justin did that to you. Are you okay? ***. Brandon, hey, long time no talk. Saw the news about Justin. That's insane. Wanna grab coffee? ***. Tiffany, I always knew something was off about Justin. You're so brave for speaking out. ***. Clara deleted every message without responding. She didn't need their validation. Didn't need their belated support. They'd chosen Justin when it mattered. That choice had consequences. On April 3rd, Clara walked into the courthouse for Justin's preliminary hearing. She wasn't required to be there, but she wanted to see it. Needed to see it. Justin looked small in his orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. His hair was greasy, his face pale. When his eyes found hers across the courtroom, she saw something she'd never seen before. Shame. The judge read the charges. Justin pleaded guilty to wire fraud and tax evasion in exchange for a reduced sentence on the other charges. 7 years in federal prison, eligible for parole after 5. The gavel came down at 10:47 a.m. It was over. Clara stood in the courthouse lobby afterward, Jean Woo beside her, Margaret shaking her hand and congratulating her. Other people milled around: lawyers, defendants, families. The building smelled like old wood and floor cleaner, sunlight streaming through tall windows. "How do you feel?" Jean Woo asked quietly. Clara thought about it. Really thought about it. "Free," she said finally. "For the first time in 2 years, I feel free." They walked out of the courthouse at 11:15 a.m., descending the stone steps into spring sunshine. Clara paused at the bottom, turning to look back at the building, at the place where Justin's fate had been sealed, where justice had finally been served. Her phone buzzed. "Miss Patterson, the kids are asking when Miss Clara is coming back. We miss you, asterisk asterisk." Clara smiled. She had a life now. A real life. A community center full of kids who needed her, a program she'd built from nothing, a future she'd fought for. And Jean Woo, standing beside her, patient and steady. "Ready?" he asked. Clara took his hand. "Ready." They walked toward the parking garage, toward the Mercedes, toward whatever came next. But before they reached the car, Clara's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Hello? Clara Bennett?" The voice was female, professional. "Yes. This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the LAPD. I'm calling about your mother's death 2 years ago." Clara's steps faltered. Jean Woo steadied her immediately. "My mother? She died of cancer." "What?" "We've received new information that suggests her death may not have been from natural causes. We'd like to ask you some questions. Can you come to the station?" The world tilted. Clara looked at Jean Woo, her hand trembling in his. "What are you saying?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "I'm saying," Detective Morrison said carefully, "that we have reason to believe your mother was murdered." Clara stood in front of her new office, the glass windows reflecting a future she had fought for, a life she was about to claim. 6 months had passed since Detective Morrison's call. 6 months of investigation, revelation, and, ultimately, closure. The detective had discovered that Justin had been in Atlanta the night Clara's mother died. Security footage from the hospital showed him entering at 1:47 a.m., leaving at 2:51 a.m. Her mother had died at 2:34 a.m. The autopsy, re-examined with new technology, revealed traces of potassium chloride in her system. Injected. Untraceable in the original examination because no one had been looking for it. Justin had killed her. Not for mercy. Not for love. But because the life insurance policy Clara's mother had, the one that paid out $85,000, had listed Justin as a secondary beneficiary if Clara was unable to claim it. He'd planned to contest the payout, to argue that Clara had abandoned her mother in her final days. He'd thought he could steal from a dying woman and get away with it. The murder charge had added 25 years to his sentence. Justin would spend the rest of his life in prison. Clara had testified at his trial in September. She'd looked him in the eye and told the jury everything, every lie, every theft, every manipulation. When the verdict came back guilty, she'd felt her mother's presence like a hand on her shoulder. Justice. Finally. Now it was April again. 1 year since Justin's initial arrest. Spring had returned, bringing with it warmth and new beginnings. The office Clara stood before was on the 3rd floor of a renovated building in downtown. The sign above the door read, "The Rosa Bennett Foundation, Empowering Lives, Building Futures." Named after her mother. Clara touched the glass door, her reflection staring back at her. She barely recognized herself. Her hair was styled professionally, her suit tailored, navy blue, understated elegance. The engagement ring on her left hand caught the afternoon light, the diamond Jinwoo had given her now accompanied by a wedding band. They'd married 3 months ago in a small ceremony at the courthouse, just the two of them and Margaret Chin as their witness. Simple. Perfect. Theirs. Inside the foundation office, Clara could see her small team setting up for tomorrow's official opening. The space was bright, modern, with photos on the walls, children from the community center, families they'd already helped, success stories in the making. The foundation provided emergency financial assistance to domestic violence survivors, helped them rebuild credit, find housing, secure employment. Everything Clara had needed 2 years ago and couldn't find. She was building what she'd needed. For others. The door opened behind her. Jinwoo stepped out, 2 coffee cups in his hands, one black for him, one with cream and 2 sugars for her. He knew exactly how she took her coffee now, just like she knew he woke at 5:30 a.m. every morning to work out, that he hated cilantro, that he got a small crease between his eyebrows when he was worried. They knew each other. Second thoughts? He asked, handing her the cup. Never. Clara took a sip. The coffee was exactly right. Just reflecting on how far you've come. On how far we've come. She looked at him. I couldn't have done this without you. You would have found a way. Jinwoo's voice was certain. You always do. I just made it faster. Clara smiled. That was the thing about Jinwoo. He saw her strength even when she couldn't see it herself. He'd never tried to save her. He'd simply given her the resources to save herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Patterson. Ms. Patterson, the kids made you a banner for tomorrow's opening. Marcus drew the letters himself. We'll be there at 10 a.m. sharp. Artist palette ***. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. The community center kids had been her anchor through everything, their laughter, their art, their resilience reminding her why she kept fighting. Ready to go inside? Jinwoo asked. 1 more minute. Clara turned to look at the street below. People walking past, living their lives, carrying their own stories of struggle and survival. How many of them were where she'd been 2 years ago? How many were sleeping in shelters, counting pennies, wondering if they'd ever feel safe again? She was going to help as many as she could. The foundation had $500,000 in startup funding, half from Jinwoo's businesses, half from donations Clara had solicited from local corporations. They'd already helped 12 families in their pilot program. By this time next year, Clara wanted that number at 50. Then 100. Then 500. She'd turn her trauma into purpose. Her pain into power. Her story into hope for others. Jinwoo's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, his voice dropping to that low, business tone he used for important calls. Clara stood alone for a moment, the April breeze cool against her face. She thought about everything that had led her here, her mother's death, Justin's betrayal, the homeless shelter, meeting Jinwoo, rebuilding piece by piece, fighting for justice, winning. She thought about the woman she'd been, broken, desperate, lost. And the woman she'd become, strong, purposeful, found. Clara. Jinwoo had returned, his expression serious. That was Margaret. Justin's lawyer just called. He wants to speak with you. Clara's grip tightened on her coffee cup. Why? He wouldn't say. But Margaret thinks it might be about restitution for your mother's death. The life insurance money he tried to steal. Clara was quiet for a long moment. She'd received the $42,867.29 Justin had stolen from her. But the $85,000 from her mother's life insurance, that had been tied up in legal proceedings, part of the murder case evidence. Do I have to see him? No. You never have to see him again. Jinwoo's hand found hers. But if there's money owed to you, to your mother's memory, you have every right to claim it. Clara looked up at the foundation sign. The Rosa Bennett Foundation. Her mother's name, preserved and honored. If that insurance money came through, it would go straight into the foundation. Her mother's legacy would live on through helping others. Set up the meeting, Clara said. But I'm bringing Margaret and you. And it happens on my terms, in my space. Jin-woo smiled slightly. Understood. 3 days later, Clara sat in the foundation's conference room at 2 p.m. Margaret on her left, Jin-woo on her right. Across the table, Justin's public defender, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Reed, sat with a folder of documents. My client has agreed to sign over all rights to the life insurance policy, Patricia said. The full $85,000, plus accumulated interest. Total comes to $91,240. In exchange, he asks only that you read a letter he's written. Clara looked at the sealed envelope Patricia slid across the table. Her name was written on it in Justin's handwriting, still that same confident scrawl, even from prison. I don't have to read it, Clara said. No, you don't. Patricia's expression was neutral. But he wanted you to have the choice. Choice. That was what this had all been about, wasn't it? Justin had taken away her choices 2 years ago. Now she got to make her own. Clara picked up the envelope. Opened it. Read silently. Clara. Asterisk, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did to you, to your mother, was unforgivable. I was desperate, greedy, and cruel. I convinced myself I deserved that money more than you did. I was wrong, asterisk. Asterisk, I've had 2 years to think about the person I became. The lies I told myself to justify hurting you. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I couldn't see its value until it was gone, asterisk. Asterisk, the insurance money is yours. It was always yours. I'm signing it over with no conditions. Use it however you want. Build something good. That's what you always did, build good things from broken pieces, asterisk. Asterisk, I'm sorry. For everything. I hope someday you can find peace, asterisk. Justin. Clara set down the letter. Her hands were steady. Her heart was calm. She looked at Patricia. I'll accept the money. But I don't need to respond to the letter. Patricia nodded. Understood. I'll have the paperwork ready by end of day. The meeting ended at 2:23 p.m. In the elevator going down, Jin-woo asked, what did the letter say? An apology. Too late, but genuine. Clara pressed the button for the lobby. It doesn't change anything. He still did what he did. But at least he knows it was wrong. Does that give you closure? Clara thought about it as the elevator descended. I already had closure. The trial gave me that. This just confirms I made the right choice. Fighting back. Demanding justice. Not letting him get away with it. The elevator doors opened. They stepped into the lobby, sunlight streaming through the glass doors. Tomorrow's the big day, Jin-woo said. The foundation's official opening. Are you nervous? No. Clara smiled. I'm ready. And she was. The next morning at 9:47 a.m., Clara stood before the foundation doors with Jin-woo beside her, Margaret and Ms. Patterson, and a crowd of supporters behind her. The kids from the community center held their homemade banner, Welcome to the Rosa Bennett Foundation. Where hope lives, asterisk asterisk. Marcus had drawn little hearts around the letters. Clara cut the ribbon at exactly 10 a.m. The doors opened. Her new life began. As people streamed inside, donors, volunteers, families seeking help, press documenting the moment, Clara felt her grandmother's cross against her collarbone, her mother's memory in every corner of the space, Jin-woo's hand steady in hers. She'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable. She'd rebuilt from absolute zero. She'd fought for justice and won. And now she was turning that pain into something beautiful, something lasting, something that would help others find their way out of darkness. This was her transformation. Complete. Clara stood in the doorway of the foundation, watching people enter, watching hope take root, and whispered to herself the same words she'd said a year ago. This is just the beginning. And that's exactly what it was, just the beginning. Clara went from sleeping in a shelter with $8,000 to her name to opening a foundation that's already helped 12 families rebuild their lives. That's not just survival, that's transformation. That's what happens when you refuse to let someone else's cruelty define your future. If this story touched you, if Clara's strength reminded you of your own, I'd be truly honored if you'd subscribe to this channel. Your support allows me to keep bringing these stories of resilience and justice to life, and honestly, knowing you're here makes every story worth telling. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let me know in the comments what your favorite moment was. Was it when Clara stood up to Justin at the community center, or when she opened the foundation in her mother's name? Until next time, remember this: your past doesn't write your future. You do. Now go write something beautiful.